Welcome to Speaking History. In this episode of our series, The True History, we delve into one of the most compelling chapters of modern American history, the life, presidency, and untimely death of John F. Kennedy. From his rise to power as the youngest elected president to the tragic events of November 22, 1963, Kennedy's story is one of triumph, controversy, and enduring myth. Let's unravel the layers of this iconic figure, exploring the man behind the legend and the impact his legacy has left on the world. On the morning of November 22, 1963, Air Force One landed at Love Field, Dallas. President John F. Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, wearing a pink Chanel suit, emerged to a warm welcome. Despite political tensions in Texas, Kennedy, accompanied by Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, aimed to project unity among Democrats. The motorcade began its 10-mile journey to the Trade Mart, where Kennedy was to deliver a speech. Crowds cheered as the open-top Lincoln Continental passed through Dallas. Nearing Dealey Plaza at 12:30 p.m., Nellie Connally, wife of Texas Governor John Connally, remarked to the president, "You certainly can't say Dallas doesn't love you." Moments later, 3 shots rang out. Kennedy was fatally struck, and Governor Connally was injured. The motorcade raced to Parkland Hospital, where Kennedy was pronounced dead. By 2:38 p.m. aboard Air Force One, Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as the 36th president, with Jackie Kennedy, still in her blood-stained suit, standing by. Meanwhile, assassin Lee Harvey Oswald fled the scene, later killing police officer J.D. Tippit before being arrested at a movie theater. 2 days later, Oswald was killed by nightclub owner Jack Ruby, sparking endless conspiracy theories. The Warren Commission's 1964 report concluded that Oswald acted alone. A former Marine and Communist sympathizer, Oswald had previously attempted to assassinate General Edwin Walker. He used a mail-ordered rifle stored at Ruth Payne's home, where his wife and child stayed. Evidence against Oswald included photographs, ballistics, and his actions on the day of the assassination. Ruby, impulsive and unstable, was also deemed to have acted alone. Despite the findings, Soviet disinformation and public distrust fueled conspiracy theories that endure to this day. The JFK legend began taking shape even as he lay in his coffin. His funeral, held on November 25, 1963, was a grand event orchestrated by his widow, Jackie Kennedy, with imperial dignity. On November 24th, Kennedy's body was carried to the Capitol's rotunda, where solemn eulogies were delivered. Senate Majority Leader Mike Mansfield said, "A piece of each of us died at that moment. Yet in death, he gave of himself to us, a profound wit, a great leadership, a courage to seek peace without fear." House Speaker John W. McCormick declared Kennedy had joined the great world leaders of history. That night, 250,000 mourners paid their respects. The next day, a mass was held at St. Matthew's Cathedral. Dignitaries from 82 nations, including French President Charles de Gaulle and British Prime Minister Alec Douglas Home, attended. Jackie, veiled in black, held the hands of her young children, Caroline and John Jr., the latter saluting his father's coffin on his 3rd birthday as millions watched worldwide. At Arlington Cemetery, 50 USAF jets flew overhead, and an eternal flame was lit above the grave. The ceremony exuded solemnity, drama, and grandeur. Jackie's later interview cemented the myth of Camelot. She told journalist Theodore White that JFK loved a line from a musical. "Don't let it be forgot that once there was a spot for one brief, shining moment that was known as Camelot." White, though later regretful, had already solidified Kennedy's legend. The myth was born. John F. Kennedy's legacy is immortalized through hundreds of memorials worldwide. From Runnymede Island in England to the Yad Kennedy Memorial in Israel, JFK's name graces airports, roads, schools, and districts across the globe. His face appears on stamps and coins, inspiring music from Bob Dylan to Igor Stravinsky, even a G.I. Joe doll in his honor. But beyond his untimely death, what shaped the Kennedy myth? It begins with his father, Joe Kennedy, a shrewd businessman from a wealthy Irish-American family. By 25, Joe became the youngest bank president in the U.S., amassing a fortune through smart, often dubious deals. His investments in Hollywood and liquor distribution post-Prohibition made him incredibly rich. Joe's ambition extended to politics, backing FDR and serving as U.S. ambassador to the U.K. But his sympathies for Nazi Germany and controversial comments about democracy ended his political aspirations. Joe shifted his ambitions to his children. His eldest son, Joe Jr., shared his father's admiration for Nazi policies, but tragically died in a World War II mission. Another tragedy struck when Joe secretly arranged a lobotomy for his daughter Rosemary, leaving her incapacitated for life. Despite these dark chapters, Joe set his sights on his second son, John, to fulfill the dream of a Kennedy presidency. JFK, inspired by Churchill, navigated his way into politics, rising as a war hero and eventually President of the United States. The Kennedy name, shaped by triumph and tragedy, remains a global symbol of ambition, resilience, and the cost of power. At the John F. Kennedy Museum in Hyannis, much of JFK's life is presented as a polished narrative. Photographs of a smiling Kennedy family dominate the exhibits, with nods to civil rights efforts, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and an extensive Kennedy family tree. Yet, the darker aspects of his life are notably absent. Affairs, controversies, and even significant illnesses are edited out, creating a sanitized view of a complex man. JFK's extramarital affairs were prolific, involving figures like Marilyn Monroe, Marlene Dietrich, and even young interns. His well-known quip to strategist Bobby Baker, "I get a migraine if I don't get a strange piece of ass every day," underlined his insatiable desires, which persisted despite debilitating health issues. Diagnosed with Addison's disease, Kennedy suffered acute back pain, infections, and weakness, hiding his condition to project an image of youthful vigor. His physical ailments required braces, medications, and even experimental treatments. Notably, his rigid back brace might have contributed to his assassination by keeping him upright after the first shot. Throughout his presidency, Kennedy was on a cocktail of medications, including amphetamines administered by Dr. Max Jacobson, known as Dr. Feelgood. These drugs masked his declining health, but fueled mood swings, even during critical moments like the Cuban Missile Crisis. The museum also omits the controversies surrounding Kennedy's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Profiles in Courage. While credited as the author, much of the writing was done by his speechwriter, Ted Sorensen. Sorensen admitted his significant contributions, but maintained that Kennedy's legacy mattered more than revealing the full truth. Despite his flaws, JFK's charisma, eloquence, and handling of major crises solidified his place in history. However, the museum's polished portrayal overlooks the contradictions that made him a uniquely complex figure, presenting only the hero while leaving the human behind. After securing the Democratic nomination for the 1960 U.S. presidential election, Jack Kennedy ran a glamorous campaign like none before. Frank Sinatra sang his campaign song, and the Rat Pack, including brother-in-law Peter Lawford, endorsed him. Kennedy's charm, wit, and charisma shone during the first-ever televised presidential debate on September 26th, where he outperformed a visibly uneasy Richard Nixon. Contrary to myths, JFK won in both radio and TV polls. His tan, a symptom of Addison's disease, added to his vigorous appearance, contrasting Nixon's pale, sweaty demeanor. Kennedy's campaign promised a new frontier to reinvigorate America, pledging healthcare reforms, Social Security expansion, a Peace Corps, and a robust stance against communism. On November 8th, he narrowly won with 49.7% of the popular vote to Nixon's 49.6% and 303 Electoral College votes to Nixon's 219. Allegations of voter fraud in Illinois and Texas emerged, but recounts affirmed Kennedy's victory. At 43, JFK became the youngest elected president, succeeding 70-year-old Dwight Eisenhower. His January 1961 inaugural address, despite freezing temperatures, delivered the iconic call to action. Ask not what your country can do for you. However, Kennedy faced an economy in recession, rising unemployment, and civil rights issues that he largely sidestepped. Black Americans, marginalized under Jim Crow laws, were frustrated with his lukewarm support. While the Kennedy administration avoided radical civil rights actions, they authorized FBI surveillance of Martin Luther King Jr., highlighting their discomfort with the movement. Internationally, Kennedy's presidency stumbled with the Bay of Pigs invasion in April 1961, a failed CIA-backed attempt to overthrow Fidel Castro. The debacle emboldened Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, who perceived JFK as indecisive. In response, Khrushchev escalated tensions in Berlin, setting the stage for the Berlin Wall. To restore American prestige, Kennedy upped the space race stakes, committing to land a man on the moon by the decade's end, a pledge costing $25.4 billion, about $194 billion today. His May 1961 speech also underscored the Cold War battlefield in the global South, laying groundwork for future conflicts. Kennedy's June summit with Khrushchev in Vienna proved disastrous. Khrushchev, aiming to renegotiate the post-World War II Potsdam Agreement, sought to isolate Allied-controlled West Berlin. The encounter left Kennedy rattled, foreshadowing heightened Cold War tensions. Despite his eloquence and promises, JFK's early presidency revealed the harsh realities of governance amidst economic challenges, civil rights unrest, and global Cold War conflicts. In life, John F. Kennedy promised far more than he ever delivered. Yet in death, his legend grew exponentially. Kennedy's presidency lasted a mere 1,036 days, one of the shortest terms in U.S. history. To put that into perspective, British Prime Ministers Theresa May, 1,106 days, and Gordon Brown, 1,048 days, outlasted him. Yet it's hard to imagine grand libraries or museums springing up in their honor anytime soon. So why does Kennedy still inspire such fascination? Part of his allure was that he emerged as a hero against the very dangers he helped create. And let's be honest, his charm, charisma, and Hollywood-esque good looks had a lot to do with his popularity. Kennedy was America's first true television president. The small screen made him a star, but his untimely death elevated him to the status of a near-mythical figure. Yet, when you strip away the rose-colored lens of nostalgia, the man and the president are far from flawless. His arrogance and poor decisions brought the world to the brink of nuclear disaster during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and his policies left a legacy stained by the bloodshed in Vietnam. Behind that dazzling smile and charismatic persona, Kennedy was an entitled alpha male who disregarded his wife and left little of true substance in the wake of his presidency. And yet, as I walk through the hallowed halls of the Kennedy Library and Museum in Boston, I find myself drawn to the legend, despite knowing better. It's like the tale of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, a myth, but a captivating and hopeful one. Who wouldn't want to believe in the dream Kennedy sold? Who wouldn't want to trust that there are leaders out there, handsome, inspiring, and driven, who genuinely want to make the world a better place? Kennedy, flaws and all, still represents that glimmer of hope for many. Perhaps that's why his story endures. Politics often elevates flawed heroes to mythical status. While some leaders may genuinely aspire to make the world a better place, the climb to the top rarely favors selflessness or purity of motive. Ruthless ambition, calculated compromise, and Machiavellian maneuvering are usually the ticket to power. Yet, once in office, history often transforms these figures, Churchill, Reagan, Mandela, into something larger than life. But Shirley Chisholm was different. Born into modest beginnings, Shirley carved her path without the privileges of the elite. In 1968, she shattered barriers, becoming the first black woman elected to Congress, embodying her campaign slogan, "Unbought and unbossed." From the start, she defied conventions. Rejecting her initial placement on the Agriculture Committee, she demanded and secured a seat on Veterans Affairs, advocating for her Brooklyn constituents, particularly African-American servicemen. Chisholm's legacy was one of fearless advocacy. She opposed the Vietnam War, championed gender equality, and fought for the rights of domestic workers and the disenfranchised. Her trailblazing efforts laid the groundwork for groundbreaking legislation and gave a voice to the voiceless. In 1972, she made history again, announcing her candidacy for president. Her vision transcended party lines, aiming to unite the disenfranchised into a coalition for real change. Yet, the political machine turned against her, uneasy with a black woman aiming for the highest office. On a shoestring budget and despite fierce resistance, she campaigned for the downtrodden, even as the odds stacked against her. Chisholm wasn't perfect. Her uncompromising nature and alliances later in her career drew criticism, even from former allies. But her defining trait, a refusal to ask permission, remained unshaken. As her friend Muriel Morrissey put it, "I don't think she ever actually asked anybody's permission to do anything." Shirley left politics in 1983, retiring to care for her ailing husband. She passed away in 2005, her impact increasingly recognized in the years that followed. Monuments, parks, and tributes now honor her, solidifying her place in history as a catalyst for change. Though Shirley Chisholm may not have reached the pinnacle of power, her legacy paved the way for others to follow. She wasn't merely a symbol of progress. She was its driving force, blazing a trail for those who dare to dream and defy the odds. Thank you for joining us in exploring the captivating story of John F. Kennedy. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your feedback in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, share it with history enthusiasts, and subscribe to Speaking History for more fascinating tales from the past. Your support keeps us inspired to uncover the truths behind history's most intriguing moments. See you in the next episode.